Hello and welcome to Seminar 10, RVE in Special Schools. This is the final seminar in the programme for the WSCA RVE Conference 2024. Now I'm going to share my screen with you in a second and we'll go through the presentation. So our aims for this session are on your screen. Like most of the other seminars in this programme, this session will provide us all with the opportunity for some much needed professional dialogue and in particular support us in developing a shared understanding of what RVE might look like in special schools and how we can provide appropriate and meaningful RVE for learners with ALN and in particular learners with profound and multiple learning difficulties. Hopefully by the end of this session, you'll feel that you've benefited from sharing your ideas, approaches and practice in this regard. And we do this today, as always, on an equal and supportive basis with professional integrity. Before we go any further, as always, we acknowledge the importance of critical engagement. Therefore, anything shared in this seminar should be considered in relation to your own school context and that of your learners, and how those examples might work in your own setting. WSCA does not advocate any particular approach or view. By now, your school will have decided on a particular approach to curriculum design, planning, teaching and learning. It could be disciplinary, which might mean that the RVE is planned completely on its own and not integrated with other humanities subjects. Instead, it has its own bespoke plan, which is informed by the humanities statements of what matters. Or it could be multidisciplinary. This might mean that RVE is planned in an integrated way with other humanities subjects, working within the context of a shared theme or topic or inquiry, but RVE stays within its own discipline for the teaching, learning and delivery. Or it could be an interdisciplinary approach, which is possibly the most tricky to master, but really exciting and worthwhile if done well. This might mean that there is an integration and synthesis of different humanities disciplines, including RVE, and sometimes other disciplines from other areas, into a coordinated and coherent whole. In these cases, I'm sorry, my battery is running low. That is a really bad timing, isn't it? I'm just going to finish my sentence and then I'll deal with that. In these cases, the planning, teaching and learning is much more holistic. Okay, I'm just going to click that off and actually plug my laptop in. I do apologise that I hadn't done that sooner. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so with any of these approaches, whichever one your school has decided on, it is still vital for the RVE provided to link to the statements of what matters in humanities and the principles of progression, which are both mandatory. And it must have regard to the RVE guidance. So the RVE sub-lenses and concepts also need to be considered and be part of the planning process. So we would normally now go into breakout rooms and what we want to do is share with each other how RVE is provided in our different settings and also the challenges that we face in special schools with planning appropriate RVE. Now, I'm just going to stop share for a sec. And just ask how people feel about that, because there's only a few of us and if you prefer to just have a chat about that as one big group, we can do that instead of going into breakout rooms. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah, excellent.
Yes,
oh, fantastic. So is there anyone that would like to say anything at all about how their school actually plans for RVE within their setting? Just to start us off, does anyone want to say anything?
Or too shy to start?
Helena?
I'll start. Yeah, I'll start. Yeah. So I am new to special education, having come from mainstream for 20 years, where I was part of a humanities faculty. So I'm trying to mirror the same approach, really, now in the school I'm at. So multidisciplinary approach, where we're looking at the what matters statements and principles of progression, and then looking at sub lenses. We get given themes, so 3 themes per year, And then I'm responsible for integrating the sub-lenses into a humanities-based curriculum. So that's where we lie in at the moment. So yeah, 3 themes a year. At the moment, our current theme is the digital age. So we're looking at how we can integrate that, you know, across the board to hit all the what matters statements and everything that we need to hit. And it's just me. So I'm planning everything. But yes, yeah, it's really nice to be part of this and, you know, be with some like-minded people. So I think the biggest challenge for me is just making sure, I think the same with everybody, making sure that the learning opportunities are relevant to the learners. We've got a mix of children in the school I'm at. So a number of children with ASD, ADHD, and then other complex needs, social, emotional, behavioural needs and things like that. So it's a mixed bag. You know, we haven't got a stereotypical one pupil. So it's making sure that those learning opportunities are varied and exciting and more hands-on, I think.
That's really, that's great, Helena. And I think, yeah, that is a real challenge because it's also can be quite exhausting thinking of always something fresh and something that lots of different learners with different complex needs can access. But yeah, well done. I mean, it sounds like you've got quite a challenge there, but also, you know, that you're handling that really well.
Well, it's exciting. It's an exciting challenge, but just making sure that, you know, I am ticking the boxes, but making sure that the kids are happy, learning and engaged as well, because ultimately, you know, in a school of the nature that I'm working in now, that's the most important thing, you know, well-being and everything else. And everything else falls in line after that.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. So is there any, I mean, hopefully after this session, you'll feel that you've actually got some other ideas as well to take back. So is there anyone, we will, obviously Pippa is going to present to us in a couple of minutes, but before Pippa does that, is there anyone else that'd like to share anything that they're doing with their schools? I don't know whether there is are there any other teachers on this?
There isn't something that I'm doing, but because I've left Bishop Bourne School now, but while I was there, there's not much wiggle room for actually teaching RVE in a Catholic school. And so what they would have to do is take what would be the religious education directory and make sure that they were linking that with Curriculum for Wales, with RVE guidance and with the locally agreed syllabus, making sure that they were paying regard to that, and then use adaptive teaching for the religious education directory, which can be quite difficult, but that is the only option in a Catholic faith school, which has, you know, sort of gone outside of the RVE guidance in that way.
And thank you, Heather. Does I mean, obviously, within a Catholic school there will be children with possibly ALN and other complex needs, but every learner would receive RVE or
absolutely, yeah, 5 times a fortnight, 10% of teaching time. And at Bishop Bourne there's a very well-established ALN department there with children who have you know, multiple learning difficulties as well as additional learning needs, physical as well. And so adaptive teaching becomes like absolutely essential there. You know, you plan for you plan for everybody, but then the ALN specialists would take that planning and adapt it to the particular classes that they were teaching. And each class, you know, within year 7, 8 and 9 were very different. The complex needs within those classes are very different. So they would have a very multi-sensory approach as well within the classroom.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Thanks very much, Heather. Would anyone else like to make any comment before we move on?
Yeah, Libby.
Hi, Julian.
Julian here from Ysgolion Arbennig in Flint, a very mixed primary special school. Really kind of making a statement about a sort of reality is we don't take a coordinated approach in school at all. we're more kind of leaving it to the discretion of the teachers and hopefully their kind of understandings and confidence. So that's one thing I basically want to kind of take from this session and sessions like these, is sort of how to steer it in a more considered way, really. So we do a lot of sensory stuff when we do it. We hit a lot of the kind of cultural events as part of RVE. But what's really difficult is kind of pitching that learning for kids with SLD and PMLD. You know, what actually are we trying to achieve with our with RVE that's meaningful and relevant for children working at those levels.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julian. And hopefully, I think by the time we finish this, you might have some answers, or it might kind of inspire some ideas from, your own ideas as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. But yeah, and if you need any further support, just let us know. Okay, so I'm going to hand you over now to Pippa from St Christopher's Special School in Wrexham, and she's going to share with you what's happening in her school with RVE. So if you just bear with us a second, we're just going to swap seats, but I also need to put the PowerPoint back on, so I'm just going to make sure that that's easy to do.
That's all right, as long as you flick it over.
Yeah, I'll flick it over, that's fine. Let me just share it.
Okay. Hi, nice to be here. Thank you, Libby, for all your support and everything that you do. Okay, so basically, I mean, from some of your learners from Plas Cork have come to our school at St Christopher's, and we have children aged from 5 to 19 with a variety of needs, and some of them have got profound and multiple learning needs. Now, what we try to do is embrace different religions and their culture and their festivals as one route of delivering RVE, and it's a very successful way of doing it, but that isn't the only way we deliver it. So if I share with you some of the ideas for the main religious festivals, and we're a very diverse school in terms of children attending our school and the staff that work there. I myself am a Sikh. I've got there's a couple of colleagues who are from the Muslim faith, and we've got children from the Muslim faith, we've got children from the Hindu faith as well, and obviously predominantly the children are Christian. So we allow all of our learners to celebrate the different religions and embrace diversity, and I think that's a really crucial thing to do for our learners. Okay, so festivals is one way to go, and we are multidisciplinary in how we do that. So it will be linked into, in our planning, it's linked into history as well, and geography about where people come from. So in that way, we try to include, say that like different parts of the world will be celebrating this. We celebrate it here as Christians in this way. So we are very, very multidisciplinary. We've got a range of photos for you to have a look at. Hopefully that'll give you some ideas. And a lot of it is about touch, taste, smelling the experience and being the experience. So hopefully those ideas and the PowerPoint that I've shared with you, and then I've got some additional ideas that aren't necessarily festival based. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you, Libby. So Diwali, and this one's a lovely one to do, and it fits in with our topic that we do every year as part of the celebrations. And it's obviously the Festival of Lights, and Hindus and Sikhs and the people from the Jain faith celebrate it for different reasons. So that's explored. We've got children who experience it through dressing up, taking part in the assembly. The young ladies that you can be seen alongside me in those photographs are showcasing their hands that they've got covered with henna paints, and they love having that as one of the experiences that they do. They fully embrace it. We do send out letters beforehand that we're going to be doing this to your child, so we do obtain parental consent to do that. They'll make diva lamps as one of the experiences as well, and that's a really nice way of incorporating a hands-on experience for the children that are able to hold anything as a way of pencils and whatnot, because some of our learners have to have one-to-one support for all activities that they do. Okay. And here we are again celebrating Diwali. Stephen made a diva lamp, and we'll always start off with something that they see as this is what would be used in a traditional home, and then they'll make their own. So they've got their own opportunities to be creative as well. And these are always used in the assemblies that they join in with. We've got this young lady in the lovely pink having a go at dressing up and dancing because that floats her boat, which is absolutely fantastic. And we'll go into the hall and we'll take all of the children. So it's about 100 children within our department at any one time, joining in with the celebrations. And one of the things that they do love doing is dressing up. And for anybody that is watching today, if you want any outfits, I have a fair few that I'm happy to pass on to you. If you get in touch with me through Libby with your email, I'm happy to post them out to you. Okay. All right. So that's one of the Diwali ones. Then we did our holy celebrations, and that's a spring festival. So there's something going on in each of the terms wherever possible. Throwing paint. Here we've got a young man that's holding a photograph of the cow, which the Hindus is for the Hindu community is a sacred animal, and they'll decorate it. We use the link of Elmer the elephant as well, so you can do it with lots of different mediums as well. Paint, and he's collage this one in this particular picture. Then we've also got food tasting going on, and then paint throwing. And the other one that we've got here that is a child that's non-verbal, and he's joining in with the dancing. So that's through listening to music. Okay. We love to make cards to celebrate the different festivals, and that's a really practical thing to do, and to give somebody who's celebrating a festival a card, like how we exchange Christmas cards at Christmas. We make holy cards, we'll make Diwali cards, and we'll also make Eid cards for the young people who are celebrating those festivals. Thank you, Libby. That's the Eid celebrations there. I've got the templates for these. We've made prayer mats as a way of using different fabrics to hold and touch and textures. And again, the food tasting one is always well received. And then most importantly for the Christian calendar is our Christmas celebrations. And we make sure that children from the different faiths celebrate all the different religious festivals to say that we're inclusive. And again, they enjoy the parties, and we do a lot of that kind of thing in our school. And historically, we've always had to do it because that's the way they learn. And it fits in with excellence and enjoyment. And Curriculum for Wales, the strands are all there to incorporate that one. And the next slide shows as celebrating Christmas, but also Christianity. I've got a vicar's outfit, and one of the young lady that's giving a blessing to everybody there. She's a churchgoer herself, and she loves going around giving everybody a blessing. So that's it, incorporated in with what she does as part of her life outside of school. And then the picture on the left is a young man. Again, he's having hand over hand help to do his Christmas sequence that he's doing. So it's all part of experiencing it. And he's a young man that is peg fed, so he doesn't get to taste the foods that we eat, but he experiences it in other ways. And then we've got another young man there with Father Christmas, because that's part of Christmas, isn't it? Right. But as I said, it's not just about using festivals. I use the Bible as a way of teaching the children about the story of creation. And what I will do is I'll read them the story of creation and then give them individual pictures that will showcase different parts of the week of the Christian week. And it's a lesson that I did today. I read the story to them, and then I gave them the pictures, and they had to sequence them. Hopefully you can see that there. Okay, I'm happy to share these resources with yourselves through Libby. Okay, so that's one of the ones that we've done, and I did that one today. Then the story of Noah's Ark lends itself to producing puppets of the different animals that went in 2 by 2. And I've got the templates for all those kind of things as well that I'm happy to share with you. And another one that the children love doing, again, it goes back to the Diwali celebrations, is producing masks. I don't know if you can see that there. Okay. And as I said, I've got the templates for all these things. I'm happy to share those because I'm really, really proud of all the things that we do at St. Christopher's. One of the things that my previous head teacher was, we have to be inclusive of everybody. And it's a way of getting children to understand other people's lifestyles. And here we've got some pictures of the dolls dressed up in saris that the children did themselves. And again, I've got the templates for those as well. So it's a very hands-on way of being celebratory of other religions and cultures. Any questions? I'm just going to stop share for a minute. Right? Has anyone got any questions for Pippa before we move on?
I just couldn't see some of those pictures that you were talking about there, Pippa.
Okay. Which ones do you?
The ones with the dolls in saris, the
Right, okay.
Noah's Ark puppets.
Oh, right, the Noah's Ark
Bible sequences from there onwards.
You'll be able to see now, hopefully.
Hopefully be able to see that. Right, there's the Noah's Ark puppets. Cut out the templates, and then through the piece of paper, you've got the giraffe, because that's one of the ones. And what I'd start off with at the beginning of the lesson is talk about, I would generally start, if I'm doing something relating to Christianity, I'll always do the signing version of, he's got the whole world in his hands, and we'll talk about what creatures did God make? And the children can choose their own. And if they can't, if they're non-verbal, they can point to in a picture. Okay.
Yeah.
And then in the saris there, and it starts off with a template like that and a bit of fabric. And I never forget the first time I did this with some of the other schools, the children, they were really funny because they painted all the faces brown. And that's really, really, that's really good because sometimes they'll notice that people are different, and other times they won't notice that children are different. And that in itself, because we are all different, aren't we, physically? Yeah. So as I said, I'm happy enough to share those templates through Libby. So if you want them, please do get in touch with Libby. And as I said, depending on the age group of your children, I've got outfits that will fit children age ranging from about 3 through to 12, 13. I'm happy enough to share them with you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Pippa. That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, Louise, you've got your hand up, and also Andrew has, I think. So we'll just go to Louise first.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And obviously, you know, the sensory and the dressing up side is probably appropriate for the additional learning needs that you're actually teaching. But in the legislation, it says that the emphasis must be on Christianity. And you did say that most of the people were Christian, and I appreciate that you cover the other religions, but it says that must reflect the fact that in Wales, basically the religious traditions are Christian and taking account of the other religions. And I am concerned about the seminars not emphasising this particular point, because obviously in the census there were 1.4 million Christians, and I'd like to see a bit more emphasis on that particular aspect. Thank you.
I think I can come in as the advisor for Wrexham. I know St Christopher's really well. I know Pippa very well. And actually, Christianity is the predominant core of the schemes of work that are provided for those learners. I think what Pippa was actually trying to show today was that they do embrace diversity in their school, and they do actually have large numbers of children from backgrounds other than Christianity, and also children who are not religious. And so the celebrations in the school that Pippa provides is really about that diversity, and so that the children can see themselves. And we've talked about this on a number of occasions. So as an advisor and knowing the legislation, I am completely happy with what's being provided in St Christopher's School. But I do appreciate, Louise, that obviously that is a concern of yours because that is the legislation. But you know, when you look at the actual schemes of work in St Christopher's, which do exist, there is a majority of Christianity that is covered.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but obviously the the legal requirements of the agreed syllabus for all local authorities do actually state that. And I think it's important that the material that's provided, whilst you say that obviously with your knowledge of the context within that school, then you say that is actually covered, but we don't know that. And, you know, I always find in these slides that you don't start with Christianity, and you tend to give examples of other faiths first of all. And I think obviously you've got to take account of the religions of other people, but you've also got to take account of the majority religion as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Andrew now. Andrew, you had your hand up earlier.
Yes, I'm obviously just an observer, long since retired, but I'm a member of the Carmarthenshire Sacrament, and I was concerned that it was only religion that was mentioned there, not sort of humanist viewpoints. And I've got grandchildren now who are, some of them are two in university actually, but they have all had an opportunity to learn about humanism. And a couple of them actually have had an opportunity to celebrate things like Darwin Day and Wallace Day here in Wales, of course, 12th of February and the 8th of January. So yes, while Louise mentioned 1.4 million Christians, there are in fact now in Wales more people who said in the census they have no religion.
From my point of view, seeing the first presentation, you can clearly see that diversity is being celebrated, and there's lots of opportunities for enrichment and things, which I think is very, very important in schools of this nature. One of my questions was, you know, we mentioned about humanism, and coming from a mainstream setting, we always delivered humanism as our non-religious perspective. I've got quite a few children in the school now that come from that are Jehovah's Witnesses, so I'm trying to incorporate their beliefs and practices into my teaching as well. And that's probably one of the biggest dilemmas for me at the moment, is making sure that you cover all of the faiths, the Christianity as per guidance, but also we have a requirement as part of RVE to consider non-religious perspectives. And it's just such a lot to get heads around, really. So, you know, and just sorry to butt in, but I just thought I'd share that and put that out there, because you're saying about your grandparents and Darwin Day and things, and that is really interesting, because we have to cover that non-religious perspective as well under the guidance, don't we?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, we absolutely do. And now that that's in the legislation, schools will have to consider how they're doing that really carefully. And that's something that I think all our schools in Wales have got to do, not just those in Wrexham. But yeah, absolutely. And making sure that there is that coverage and that inclusivity, I think, is really important. I'm going to go to Jenny now. You've been waiting patiently.
Oh, thanks, Libby. And yeah, thanks, Pippa. It's really, really so interesting. And I suppose listening to everybody, there's just a point that I'd really like to make, that it is so important and relevant in this curriculum that we start with the children's Cynefin. And so, you know, from what Pippa was saying, embracing some of the traditions that the children are seeing in each other's homes. And when Pippa spoke about the importance of respect and valuing one another and difference with people, I think, especially working from the level of the children that she's working with complex learning needs, I thought was really, really interesting, Pippa, and made me think. But I suppose what I really want to stress is this idea of Cynefin, that is starting with the learner before you even go out anywhere. So there's a lot of academic discussion in this group, which maybe is misplaced slightly at the moment, when the focus really is on how would you deliver RVE within this complex setting. And surely that is to begin with the children.
Yeah, could I just add something on to that? Yeah, I think that's why it's important to look at the locally agreed syllabus, because it does take account of the local context within your local authority area.
Saying that though, Louise, sorry to butt in, the teacher will know their class better than the locally agreed syllabus. So the locally agreed syllabus is there to support and guide, but at the end of the day, the teacher has to manage that setting and understand the complex needs within that. And that is the role of a teacher, and that's why it's such a profession, you know, such an important profession, and especially in this kind of setting in a special school, that teacher has that understanding, those you know, support assistants have that understanding. It's absolutely crucial. You've got to start from the children. You've got to give that teacher autonomy and allow that integrity to be allowed to use their professional understanding of the complex needs of their children and learners, and act from that is
Oh yes,
really
yeah,
what I would say.
I appreciate
Libby.
that, and I was just saying in general, obviously, you know, in different areas, for example, there are you know, different levels of the population who are of a particular religion, and I think obviously within schools that's the same, and that's the general point that I was making. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Heather.
Hi, I'm off mute.
No, you're fine.
I think it's really important that we also remember that we have to follow the RVE guidance here and be an objective, critical and pluralistic in our approach. And, you know, we have a moral duty to be objective, critical and pluralistic, you know, whilst presenting Christianity in the main. I absolutely agree with Jenny that we have to look at the demographic of not only the school but the class itself, and you know, having a multi-sensory approach, as Pippa just showed us, with children who have profound learning difficulties. I'm just thrilled that that is going on in a classroom, which could quite easily shelve, you know, RVE, and focus on other sort of more you know, sort of other aspects. And I think to give them that rich experience, I think that was really encouraging to see that happening. But I do think that we have to, you know, ensure that we are being objective, critical and pluralistic from an ethical point of view, but also from an educational point of view as well.
Thank you, Heather. Yes, I completely agree with that. Thank you. Okay, Julian.
Yeah, I think for me, what's really critical in, you know, this query about how do you balance the things that the curriculum suggests you should be doing is, you know, it's a little bit flippant, but we can always play the special needs card, because we need to be adapting the you know, curriculum for our learners, for our children, and you know, being respectful of where the child is, what their developmental stage is, and all the rest. You know, in my class, I'm working with children who are sort of at, you know, around about 18-month-old developmental stage, broadly speaking. So, you know, it's not about trying to, and I think we've touched on this, saying, you know, sensory experiences, hands-on experiences. It's about contextual learning, and it's about, you know, developing the child where they are in a child-friendly and developmentally appropriate way. So I'm not expecting my children to take anything technical or from any RVE that I do in class. These are vehicles for them to develop their key skills, their emerging skills. But also in terms of RVE, what do we expect an 18-month-old to understand, even if we were just to stick with one religion, or even those of us who have a personal confession? What would we expect of, you know, if you're a Sunday school teacher with 18-month-olds, and yes, being a Sunday school teacher, you are teaching confessionally and leading confessionally. What do you actually expect an 18-month-old to get from those experiences? And it's that business for me about, you know, wonder and a sense of the numinous through the experiences that you are putting out there for them.
Thank you, Julian. That's really insightful. Thank you. Okay, Pippa, do you want to say anything before we move on? Are you happy to?
No, that's fine. No.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Right then, so I'm going to share the presentation again, and we'll get back to, sorry, just bear with me a second. It's all a bit clunky, isn't it? Sorry, guys. Oh, actually, you had a video, didn't you? If you get a chance, we'll do it at the end, if that's okay with you. Brilliant. through. Okay then, so as quite a few of you have mentioned, there is an extra layer of central support for RVE in the form of the RVE guidance on which your locally agreed syllabus is based and which your school must have regard to when planning. There's also a small section on ensuring inclusivity within that guidance, which we'll have a look at in a second. If you haven't already seen the guidance, then obviously that's the link there, and I can share this presentation with you from tomorrow. So this is the ensuring inclusivity section. To be fair, it doesn't say a huge amount. It's sort of just one section, but it does acknowledge that the needs of all learners must be considered when planning and providing effective learning opportunities in RVE. Therefore, RVE might look a bit different in special schools than perhaps in a mainstream school. And also it might be different for individual learners in special schools, which I think you've already, many of you have already said. So it really does depend on the individual needs of each learner, which could be profound and complex. It also offers some things for you to consider, such as active multisensory approaches, which we've already talked about and that Pippa has shared hers with you. Inclusive opportunities for learners to experience awe and wonder, using a variety of stimuli, full participation of all learners, including those who use a means of communication other than speech, and visiting local places of worship and other special places of significance in the local community. I think we've sort of picked this up already, this has already been mentioned by you, that experiences in RVE in special schools are what really matters. Learners with profound and multiple learning difficulties will progress, as you've said, in very different ways and at very different speeds. By comparison to mainstream learners, but what they experience in RVE can really enhance and impact their lives. So we may have to be creative and more creative, and sometimes think outside the box when planning suitable and meaningful learning experiences for them. Special schools and settings providing education for learners with ALN, and particularly those with profound and multiple learning and difficulties, will be familiar with Routes for Learning, which provides guidance and support around various aspects of special education. So that's what it looks like on Hub. The Routes for Learning assessment booklet includes 12 roadmap themes, which you can see here. Again, I'm sure you're familiar with these. Now, when I was looking at each one of these, when we were putting this seminar together, they really do show that many of our learners have much bigger challenges in life than being able to remember facts about different religions and beliefs, which I think we've already said that in our discussions. So one of the questions that I'd like to ask today is, why then is it important for learners with profound and multiple learning difficulties to receive RVE as part of their learning journey? And what type of things should they be learning about? So again, we would normally go into breakout rooms for this, but I think it would be nice to just have that discussion between us as we have been doing. So what is it that they should be learning about? We've obviously covered from Pippa's presentation and from things that you've already said, things like celebrations, and looking at celebrations like festivals and things like that, which are a really nice way of including lots of different learners from different backgrounds. But is there anything else in RVE specifically that would lend itself to learners with ALN?
I think that values are really important, being kind to one another, being showing forgiveness to one another, showing love, appreciation of who you are, as a human being. All those sort of values that come with RVE would be really, sorry, I may have jumped in before Jenny, sorry Jenny. It's what it means to belong, being in community. How do we show love and care for one another? That would be sort of some of my priorities really with.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. I think that absolutely that's really very important. And when I've spoken to Pippa on a number of occasions, and the head teacher, Margaret, at Pippa's school, we've talked about community being extremely important, and those values of caring for each other and being respectful of people with, you know, from different backgrounds, or even people with the same background, but just caring for one another, being kind. That's really important. Thank
Just
you
to
very
add
much.
on, you could, sorry to interrupt you, but you could actually link then to like the natural world and go into environmental things. So kindness for each other and respect for each other. But then you could link that on, you know, within geography to, you know, environmental campaigns, litter picking, you know, anything like that. And you can look at, you know, Islamic views on the environment, or Khalifa and creation and all sorts, couldn't you then, you know, it's little things. And again, learning through enrichment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
litter picks, just simple things like that. We look at like respect in the local grounds, the local community. We might take a walk down to the park and look at nature. You know, why should we be looking after nature? So things like that. And that links to the lady at the very beginning was talking about Cynefin, and that links to, you know, your local community, your identity, your belonging. You're kind of like, you know, searching for meaning and purpose as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's hitting a lot of things there, isn't it? You know, it's, although maybe you're starting with values and ethics, you're actually then moving through the lenses and looking at it from through different lenses, like the natural world, you know, and you know, all sorts of things really, that identity and belonging and what have you. So absolutely, thank you very much, Helena. Jenny, do you want to come in then?
Yeah, just really quickly, and it was just to bring in that idea of Cynefin again, is really only in RVE and humanities that it's really mentioned, but using the environment, using your community, engaging with the whole sort of multidisciplinary aspect of humanities and RVE, and also it's where your spirituality comes in, is what I wanted to say. So any kind of the awe and wonder and appreciation of life at its sort of simplest and most complex, however you want to take that. But I think it's probably the Cynefin and the spiritual aspect of RVE and values that would be the most relevant in these contexts, I would have thought.
Yeah. I was just going to say that.
Yeah, and actually you've kind of, I'm going to be bringing that up a bit later on in the seminar actually, and we'll have a look particularly at the section of the RVE guidance that has spiritual development in it, and seeing what we can pick out of there. But yeah, I would absolutely agree. Julian, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you. I think in terms of sort of why we're sort of, you know, the question at the start was what should learners be learning about and why. I mean, I think one thing that's really important with you know, RVE is storytelling is critical, and as a mode of teaching, you know, that's absolutely fundamental for, I think, for all learners of any age. It's the most engaging way of getting information over, but it's hugely important for children, again, of any age, but also then for, you know, our learners. We've talked about you know, sensory stories a little bit, that sensory approach to learning, and the way you can perform story and bring the learners in, you know, if almost like a sort of co-production. What is their engagement with the story? You know, at a fairly gut level, it seems to me that religions tell stories about who we are, you know, what we might be supposed to be doing and how we might be supposed to be doing it, and I think that just absolutely ties into where children are at, and being able to hook them in through storytelling of these, you know, foundational stories for every community.
Thank you, Julian. Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you. Andrew, would you like to come in?
Yeah, can I be really pedantic, and as possibly the only native Siaradwr Cymraeg here, that one F is a V sound, so it's Cynefin, not Cynefin, Cynefin.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Can I just ask Heather and Julian, are they legacy hands, or have you got something else?
I just wanted to say something, picking up what Julian said. because, you know, obviously, you know, there's rich stories within the religions themselves, but also there are lovely storybooks which, you know, can link with the values. And so finding those links to stories that also, you know, are general, they're not necessarily religious or explicitly religious, but nevertheless hold those values, would also be really good, especially sort of those who've got developmental age, as Julian said, of, you know, a toddler developmental age. So those stories, there's lots of lovely rich stories out there which link with those values, which are cross-cutting across religions and non-religious worldviews.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. That's a really good point. Andrew?
Yeah, with regard to books, as I think I've mentioned in one of these previously, I'm 78 years old. So 70 years ago or thereabouts, a grandmother gave me a Bible for children with pop-up pictures. And one of them was of the Last Supper, and Judas Iscariot was appearing round a pillar. And I vaguely remember this, but my long deceased mother used to tell me it was horrible. I used to wake up having nightmares that Judas was coming to get me. So you have to be very careful about what sort of books are. You know, and I just remember that now when you mention books aimed at children, you have to be very careful what you provide.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, when we were doing the non-maintained nursery settings seminar, actually, we did talk about the appropriateness of some stories and also some resources, you know, sort of, for example, you can have, you know, years ago we used to loan out sort of big dolls for nursery settings, but actually now we realise that they can be extremely scary for younger children, or even children who are not younger but perhaps have a developmental age of a younger child. So yeah, we do have to be very careful and thoughtful around, you know, what we're presenting to our children and what they might you know, be fearful of. But yeah, some really excellent points there. Thanks very much, everybody. Okay, we're going to move on now. So I'm going to get my presentation back up. Give me a second. Thank you for bearing with me throughout this. It's a bit clunky, this one. Okay. So what I was going to say here, moving on to looking at the actual the 12 roadmap themes, and basically, you know, there are lots of ways that RVE can contribute to learners with PMLD making progress in these themes, but it's sort of identifying, well, what might that look like? So these are sort of basically just a list of questions that teachers or practitioners in settings where they're providing learning for learners with ALN or PMLD, they could ask these questions themselves when they're thinking about planning. So what could the stimuli be? You know, who are the people? Are they visitors? You know, are they the children themselves, etc.? Where is the pattern and repetition? What could the preferences be in RVE? What objects and artifacts could be introduced? Which environments could be explored? So would they be outside the classroom? Would they be inside the classroom? Would that include visits to anywhere? And what would those places be? What opportunities for being sociable could be offered? And we know, obviously, with Pippa's examples, there's lots of opportunities to be social when celebrating festivals. What could the change of focus be if that's something that is one of the themes? What cause and effect opportunities can be offered? How can actions be encouraged? What activities can encourage problem solving within RVE? And where could options be included in our lessons? So a lot of things to think about, but these are some of the questions. I mean, obviously wouldn't expect all of the 12 roadmap themes to be included within RVE, but it is something that perhaps as practitioners and those planning for our learners, we should perhaps be asking ourselves. On Hub, there are a suite of professional learning resources for RVE, and there is one for special schools as well. And in that playlist, there are a variety of examples that are worth looking at. And I think we might be able to put a link to these in the chat by the end of the session so that you can have a look at this if you haven't already seen it. I'm not going to go through it in a lot of detail. But just want to show you what's there really. So in each example, you've got a sort of description of what the activity is and you know, what the experience of the learners was. So for example, this one is the Christingle and making Christingles, and it's multi-sensory, etc. But it also pulls out from one of the statements of what matters in the humanities, you know, what it's actually covering. So for this one, we encounter and make sense of the world through a variety of events and experiences. And then it also at the bottom there gives you a kind of sub-lens that teacher who planned that particular activity was thinking about when they were planning. So there's a few of these. We've got one for religious symbols, which is the sub-lens identity and belonging. So they were looking particularly at Star of David and making stars from clay, again, nice and sensory. Moon and Stars, which was learning about the festival of Ramadan. We've got two for Ramadan, I think, actually. This was Search for Meaning and Purpose. And then there's one, which I really like this one, on good deeds. So learners had to think of some good deeds they could carry out as part of the festival. And so that obviously, again, links to values and ethics. And I think, Heather, you were talking about that being really important part of learning for learners with ALN. And then we've got special places, so going on a visit to a local church, and this particular teacher had linked that to the sublens of authority and influence. And then we've got being a good friend, which again is lovely, and you know, relationships and responsibility lens there was being used. And finally, there's a spiritual development one as well, and that's really what I wanted to concentrate on. I know, Jenny, you brought this up a few minutes ago, so I'd quite like to have a little look at that in a bit more detail. So I don't know whether anyone has any questions. Sorry, I've skipped over that slide, but if you have any questions, do let me know. You'll have to shout because I can't see anyone on the screen at all at the moment. But if there are no questions, I'm going to move straight on. So I think this is an area that can be explored really nicely and effectively with learners with PMLD or ALN. And this bit is from the RVE guidance, and it outlines the 4 main areas of spiritual development in RVE. So awareness of self in relation to others, connections to the wider and the natural world, and for some people to a higher power or ultimate reality, creating and going beyond the everyday, and exploration of ultimate questions and contemplation of meaning and purpose. So these particular examples that I've pulled out here are the opportunities you can offer your learners from those 4 areas. Now, there are others included in the guidance, but I think these really lend themselves to special schools in particular, but it is worth you checking out that guidance if you haven't already seen that section on spiritual development to see what you think might be relevant to your learners as well. But all of those there, you know, you've got experiencing awe and wonder and being amazed by things, you know, you've got being present in the moment and experiencing the natural world, all things actually that, as it happens, we've kind of mentioned anyway, and particularly experiencing the richness of the stimuli around them through use of the senses, which I think has really been explicated in this particular seminar. The other thing that I wanted to show you were the example learning journeys in the RVE guidance. There's one example learning journey for each of the RVE sub-lenses, and they can offer ideas and inspiration for your planning. These two sub-lenses in particular, I think, really provide some richer, meaningful learning opportunities. And so even though, and we've kind of mentioned, I think probably both of these are within this particular seminar already, even though some of your learners may be operating at levels below the progression steps, the descriptions within these example learning journeys could still be helpful if you look at the first section of each one, which is at the early stages. Some might be more helpful than others for your learners, of course, they will be, but they are definitely worth a look. So these are the first sections of 2 example learning journeys that could be useful when thinking of like themes and topics for RVE. So you've got the natural world and living things. Learners begin to show care and respect for the natural world and living things. And we've talked about this just, I think it was Helena that brought this one up, experiencing awe and wonder. So, you know, things like nature walks in the community, you know, having plants in the classroom that can be watered by the children and be cared for, spending time outside on sunny days or windy days in the snow for them to feel those elements on their skin, etc. You know, seeing the light through the trees, or, you know, hearing the rustling of the leaves. All of these things I think are really, really good you know, things to do with your learners, and that really could develop them spiritually and really have an impact on their lives. The journey of life, learners begin to recognise that people have personal life stories, and again, we've talked about stories already. So to be honest, you needn't have come to this seminar because you kind of knew what you were doing all along. But it is nice, I think, to have that assurance that actually in the guidance, what you're saying and what you're thinking and what you're planning is actually, you know, what is expected. So you know, learners can tell their own life stories, or it might be inviting visitors in to tell their stories. If your learners are able to do that, obviously if they're not, then it might be through actually story books. Celebrating birthdays and special times together. Because further down it talks about they experience and compare how their own and other people's growth is acknowledged and celebrated. So yeah, celebrating things together. Or it might be going on a trip and preparing for that actual journey. So, you know, there's things there, inspiration there in those example learning journeys that you could have a look at, that really might inspire you to do something perhaps that you hadn't thought of before, although everything that we've mentioned here I think you already have thought of. Okay, so this would be the final breakout room, but again, we're not going to go into breakout rooms, but we can discuss this if you've got any more that you can think of. And it's the questions asking you what topics, big questions and themes might be appropriate to explore with your learners, and what types of experiences might you plan for your learners within those topics. Now, I am going to stop share again so I can see you all. I kind of feel as if we've already done this now, because lots of our conversations have been about this, but if there's anything else that you want to share, it'd be lovely to hear from you. And you too, Pippa, if you want to say anything, you can squeeze in.
There's a really good point, sorry, to put in that Julian's put in the chat.
Oh, sorry, I didn't notice the chat. Go on.
Shall I read it, Julian?
Read it, yeah, please.
Do you want to read it, Julian?
Yeah, I can do. Let me just find the chat. So yeah, I put basically, I think there's, and this is for the whole curriculum, this isn't just RVE, this is across all 6 AOLEs. I think because the new curriculum has chosen to limit itself to formal education and nursery 3 to 16 age range, there's a really quite glaring error and gap in that Roots for Learning envisages learners up to 18 months old of neurotypical development. And of course, progression step 3, although we sort of kind of encouraged to try to not to think in a linear developmental progression kind of way, does sort of start itself off at age 3. Now, I don't know about the other 5 AOLEs, but I was on one of the members of the working group in the pioneer phase for health and well-being, and special schools were heavily represented in that group, given our critical concerns in those areas. There were 7 special schools in that group, and although we were told there was special school representation in each of the AOLEs, my suspicion is that we were kind of team-handed in that one, and we kept shouting loud and proud that there's this 18-month developmental gap, and even though the sainted Professor Donaldson sort of set himself 3 to 16-year-old stuff, this is a key opportunity for once to actually fill that gap. That's why P levels came about, because there was a gap and a lack of provision. And I think that the thing is, special schools across all of the curriculum, but RVE as well, are having to make possibly reasonably kind of isolated judgments about what that gap consists of in terms of learning and appropriate pedagogy and all of that sort of thing. And of course, well-meaning, experienced, knowledgeable professionals will do well to do that, but it's once again we're in this gap, and at my school we as an assessment tool, we buy the curriculum for Wales, bought into the curriculum for Wales materials produced by B Squared, and that's great, but it is a very particular approach to assessment. It's very tick boxy, it's very linear, all of these sorts of things. So I hope that my colleagues at school, we don't hopefully worship at the altar of B Squared, but we hopefully use it as a tool. But I think there is an opportunity in that gap as well. And I kind of mentioned earlier, didn't I, flippantly, the playing the special needs card. We can justify and explain what we do as best we can using the language of a document that was written for mainstream 3 to 16-year-olds. But we also have that little joker in our armory going, oh, can't do it like that, guys. Sorry, special needs, bang. And unless your Estin inspector comes from a special needs background, you tend to get away with quite a lot. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks ever so much, Julian. That is it's a really good point to make, and I think it's an important one. Thank you. Does anyone else want to have a comment there, or anything that they want to share? So, Louise, your hand's up.
Yeah, it was really a question for Julian from what he said there. I mean, are you saying that you need to sort of, if the progression isn't linear, are you saying that you need to look at developing, steps yourself that show progression, but they are on a level as opposed to going up? Is that what you're saying? Because I'm just trying to understand the point you've made.
Absolutely. I mean, the sort of achievement and progression that our learners are making is going to be sort of idiosyncratic, spiky. You need to revisit things for generalization. What you think your child, your learner, your pupil has achieved one day, will need to be revisited again. I mean, there's this concept of the spiral curriculum anyway throughout education, of revisiting things to bed it down and to broaden your skills and understandings. But that's even more so for our learners, to layer that learning. So yes, progression can be horizontal as well as vertical, in terms of, can my children do these things in different contexts? They're prepared to, tackle, sensory work, say in cookery, but will they do sensory work out in forest school? That sort of thing. Will they generalize? So yes, and it is very organic, and it is very kind of holistic to the child, and that's kind of what I mean when I say you play the special needs card. It's like, I'm not even going to bother teaching about the technicalities of something, because my children who happen to be 10 years old are working like a 1-year-old or an 18-month-old or 2-year-old. You know, so I'm not bothered. I think history is always the really good example of this. I'm not bothered about teaching about the ancient Egyptians content. I don't expect my children to go away with any content knowledge, but it's a context for them to do the learning they need to do developmentally. You know, the pyramids are in sand in the desert, so sand play and blocks and stones and the River Nile, the water. You know, I'm not expecting them to go away knowing knowledge content at all. I mean, perhaps they do, and by layering what you're doing, you're building some sort of understandings of that. So yeah, it is about following the child where they're at, what their relevant next steps are in that gap, and knowing that, you know, a next step could be very, very tiny. And this is why I focus very much on that experiential sort of thing, that awe and wonder and the numinous, because that's where the children are at. And if I can do that with the children, you know, the sort of the Trinity and transubstantiation and consubstantiation can come next. You know, I'll leave that to my colleagues in secondary school.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both. Heather?
So this might be a completely different question for another time, and I don't want to prolong the meeting where people may want to get off early, but I'm just really interested in this whole concept from Donaldson about progression steps and people interpreting that in a linear fashion, because I don't think that Donaldson was ever meant to be taken that way in terms of linear progression. And they were meant to be more descriptions of learning rather than progression steps, moving away from the old sort of way of leveling children. But we don't seem to be, as teachers, able to move away from that approach, and progression needs to be mapped, and children need to be measured as in terms of education. But I'd like, you know, I think that it's a whole different type of discussion really, but I'd like to see people's views on what progression steps, descriptions of learning, and all of that actually mean for our education system. Yeah, that's I just wanted to raise that, and I think that, you know, what Julian said about, you know, the whole prospects of working with, you know, PMLD students, learners, is very different, isn't it? Because, you know, you're taking those very tiny little steps, and what you see as progression might be way off the scale of anything that's in those descriptors of learning. But I'm just interested in the whole approach to assessment, anyway, you know, and how people view it in terms of, you know, moving through from 3 to 16. You know, being a principal examiner at GCSE and A level, I think that I'd be interested to see how people at primary and secondary schools see the way Donaldson is working its way through.
Thank you, Heather. Kind of links in actually with what I was going to say next, because what I'd like to, I think we've achieved our aims today. You've all shared something, and I'm really grateful for that. You've all contributed in your own way, and that's what makes these sessions work, and what makes them so valuable. But what I wanted to sort of do is ask, well, what else do you require from WASCA? You know, have these sessions been helpful? And whether they have or they haven't, what would you like to see next? You know, what's the next steps? And perhaps, Heather, I'm just thinking from what you said there, more discussion on progression might be useful.
An assessment, I think.
An assessment, okay.
Yeah.
And that's across the age and ability range.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Everybody
you.
seems to be reporting in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's still a massive question, and I think schools are really concerned about that, and lack confidence in that. Okay, thank you. I've written that down. Is there anything else from anyone else? Jenny, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in on what Heather had asked really and said, and it was when earlier when mentioned critical, objective, pluralistic, and then thinking about what Julian had been saying. So I've been looking a lot at the progression of critical and critical thinking, and actually, you know, where does that even start? So it's curiosity.
Yeah.
And I suppose the work that I've been doing and looking at, I'm starting to think, well, the progression steps are the tools that the teacher uses for planning, really, to guide that pedagogy. You know, what is it that I want to get my class or my the children towards, the learners towards. For me, that's a kind of just a signpost, and then I think much more professional dialogue, as you say, Libby, around what do we mean by that? What does it look like? What's the pedagogy of that? How do we break that down into steps? So just, I think what, you know, the reminder from Julian of just where we're talking about the beginning points of these learners, and maybe we start right at the very beginning from birth and look at how children develop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Heather. There's a lot of work to be done, but we are still really in the early days.
In
And
the
it is
infancies, yeah.
such an exciting curriculum, I think, if we can just hold our nerve and work together.
Thank you, Jenny. That's brilliant. Louise?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's up to Professor Donaldson what his actual views are, but I got the impression that it was about talking about achievement in relation to the level that the child was already at, you know, so that, in other words, if you're looking at schools and things, it was, you know, not on the basis of what they achieved, but in a sense, what they achieved from the level that the pupils entered the school and how they achieved themselves on an individual basis. So, I mean, I don't know whether that's relevant to the steps of progression or descriptions of it, but it was an idea that did come out from, I believe it was from Donaldson, because I think that's one of the reasons why he changed the evaluations of schools in general. So it might be worth, you know, thinking about that particular point, particularly in relation to additional learning needs, where obviously the level of understanding may be lower.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. And I think that's something I've picked up from reading the Eston Inspection Framework recently. That's one of the things that they will look out for is you know, how schools use assessment to plan for individual learners, and knowing where those individual learners are, and you know what their achievement is in relation to where they had been. So yeah, thank you for that. Julian, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, thanks. Sort of following on from what Jenny said about you know, progression and what does that look like in certain areas. I think we're sort of quite privileged in the special needs sector because we come in at the foothills, at the foundation level of what it might be and what it looks like. You know, I think colleagues in mainstream, and the older you get in mainstream, that there's a sort of direction of travel in the system that they're locked into, whereas we are more light on our feet about what we can do, why we can do it, our justifications, and I think that's something, you know, in terms of our teacher agency, we have a lot of scope anyway in special needs. But I think, again, echoing what Jenny says, you know, the flexibility of what the new curriculum and what Professor Donaldson is talking about is a huge opportunity. And we've been used to progression being linear because that's the way the system has been set up for 30 years, right back to the start of the national curriculum. And there's a whole generation and more of teachers where that's what teaching entails, you know, that's just core. Whereas now the pendulum has swung in Wales and Scotland, I guess, you know, for to more teacher agency and more responsive to the children, and we are that's us. That's where we're at in special needs completely. You know, even though progression step 1 starts at age 3 and our children perhaps aren't in that ball game, I've been a fan of the new curriculum from the moment I started, you know, getting involved with it, you know, as part of the pioneer group, because it talks our language, and you know, it's a huge opportunity.
Thanks, Julian. That's great. Heather, is that a legacy hand?
No, I just want to say one more thing, and then I will promise I will be quiet, because I absolutely agree with what Louise said, and you know what Julian said there, that the biggest issues that I've seen is in secondary schools, where there's this accountability of moving towards GCSE and A level, and you know, I've even seen some schools, you know, equating progression steps to grades at GCSE, and so that I think there does need to be more exposure around what we mean by assessment with regards to Donaldson, and more freedom in how we want to assess within schools. But I agree with what Louisa said, and Julian on the other end, but my experience comes from the secondary sector, where people feel totally accountable that they are moving towards preparing pupils for Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5. So yeah, there we are. I'm not going to say any more now because I've said too much.
Yeah, you haven't said too much at all. That's the whole point of these sessions, is that people, we can have these conversations. Okay, thank you to everybody for everything that you've contributed. It really does make these sessions what they are. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. If you do have any further questions or comments that you want to make, any ideas for anything that we need to do in the future, you can email me. You can use my personal, not my personal, but my professional email, which is libby.jones@wrexham.gov.uk, or the wasaka@outlook.org, I think. And so just let me know. I'm just going to check that email address in case I've got it completely wrong. Yes, it's wasaka@outlook.com. So I was wrong. I'm glad I checked it. So let me just get back to, yes, that's true. We have actually got time to share Pippa's video that she brought with her today. So if you don't mind, before I release you, I mean, you can go whenever you like, but I'm just going to try and share this video with you of the children. What are they singing?
It's a Starry Night for Christmas.
So it was a part of a Christmas carol concert, and the song is It's a Starry Night.
It was on a starry.
It was on a starry night, and they're using Makaton. So I'm going to try and share that now with you.
It was on a starry night, and the hills were bright, and the sleeping, sleeping colors still, and in the light, in the angel bed, a boy was born, King of the wild world. And now the angels sang him, that's heaven running for him, for a boy was born, King of all the world. And now the angels sang him, that's heaven running for him, for a boy was born, King of all the world. Soon the shepherds came again, with the baby Mary, and the kneeling by his side, and the
That's a nice way to end the seminar, I think. Thank you ever so
Thank
much.
you.
So remember that your local SAC or RE advisor can also support you, and so do use them. And if you need my help finding out who they are, please contact me. I'll let you know. I think everyone here knows who they are. But thank you again for your contributions, and have a really good evening.